Hi everyone, this is Phil from Gaming, and in this video I've got 10 more great gameplay tips to show you for Valheim. Tip number 1 is safely harvesting queen bees. Now what you're going to do this without taking any damage is you're going to place down a workbench whenever you come across an abandoned building that has a hive in it. Then you simply select your hammer and you start breaking down all of the building around the hive, and the hive will eventually fall down, and that's it. You just collect your queen bee. You don't have to take any damage. No bees are stinging you. I think that's pretty good. I like that. Tip number 2 is how to make a neat fireplace. Typically when you make a fireplace indoors, you're going to make a hole in the floor and you'll place your campfire on the ground. But in doing so, the campfire is below the floor and it looks like crap, and it also makes it hard to use cooking racks with it. So what you should do is you should grab your hoe and set it to raise ground, and just raise the ground until it is absolutely flush with your floor, and then set the campfire. In doing so, it'll make it much nicer to look at and easier to use for cooking. I'd like to thank Armitage Shanks for sending in this tip. And to go right along with that, tip number 3 is putting multiple cooking racks on a campfire. Typically, you're going to put a cooking rack like this on a campfire, but what you could do is align it the other way, and then you can set multiple down on a single campfire. You might think that it's a little tricky to get your food onto it, but nope, you can absolutely fill the racks and they will cook just fine, and getting them off the racks is just as easy. As a matter of fact, the racks seem to act like a nice little barrier to keep you from getting burned. And just make sure that you've left a little space on the side so that you can fuel the fire. I'd like to thank Ricky N25 for sending in that tip. Tip number 4 is kind of a silly one, but if you're in a multiplayer game and you're on a boat and you've got nothing else to do, you might as well jump. Because it's the only real thing you can do. You can't really do any of your attacks because you risk damaging the boat. So if you're jumping on the boat, you're going to increase your jumping skill. Do be mindful of the fact that, of course, you could fall off the boat, but use it at your own risk. I'd like to thank David Lee Roth for sending in that tip. Tip number 5 is increasing your blocking skill. Now, most of the combat skills in Valheim can be increased in PvE mode, but blocking is the exception. Blocking will not increase if you have a friend attack you and you're in PvE mode. So in order for it to work, you will need to toggle it into PvP mode. This, of course, comes with the inherent risk of, well, potentially dying, but you can increase your skill in blocking with very low risk. Tip number 6 is finding buried treasure. If you ever find a group of rocks that are in the shape of a boat, grab your pickaxe and start digging, because under the ground there is more than likely a buried treasure chest. So what you want to do is you're going to dig through that whole area and you're going to find a couple of things. The first thing you're most likely going to find is skeletal remains, and that means that you're on the right track, and skeletal remains does mean that you'll get some bone fragments out of it. But after enough digging, we were able to find ourselves a treasure chest, and in that treasure chest we found some rubies, some gold, and even some flaming arrows, but I'm sure your results will vary. So remember, you're looking for rocks that are in the shape of a boat. Tip number 7 is understanding the rested buff. Now, in order to get the rested buff, you're going to need to go into a building, and that building will need to have some comfort stat associated with it. Now, most buildings are going to have comfort stats because they're going to usually have a campfire so you can place beds. Campfires provide comfort. Other things that provide comfort are things like rugs and banners and so on. And if you stay in a building long enough that have those stats, you will get a rested buff. The default amount of time for a rested buff is 8 minutes, but each point in the comfort stat will increase that duration by an additional minute. So what you're going to want to do in order to maximize the effect is you're going to want to put in as many different things that improve comfort as possible. So these include rugs, banners, braziers, so those are the metal torches. Also, certain trophies will increase your comfort, and of course campfires as well. So just make sure to put as much as you can into a building to maximize your comfort. Tip number 8 is identifying biomes from the map. Now, I can't believe I didn't notice this earlier, but in the upper right corner of the map, it does show what biome you're pointing at with the mouse at all times. So you can figure out whether or not you're in a black forest or a meadow. As I said, I can't believe I didn't notice it. Tip number 9 is reclaim abandoned buildings. Now, let's say, for example, you're out and about and it's getting close to night and you don't want to make a whole building from scratch in order to lay down a bed. Well, what you could do is simply lay down a workbench and start repairing an abandoned building, because the abandoned building doesn't require any resources to repair it. Then you can use whatever limited resources you have to lay down a workbench or a bed and sleep through the night. So, I mean, it's just a nice, easy way, especially early on, to get yourself a building and not have to worry about, that scary old night. And finally, tip number 10 is place your base near multiple biomes. I cannot stress enough how important it is to have multiple biomes near your base in order to get as many different kinds of resources as possible. Here's a base we just started building, and as you can see, we've got meadow, black forest, mountains, there's even some plains and swamp nearby. We also have this on the ocean. So we've got lots of different biomes available to us in order to get as many different kinds of resources for the later game.
Do you have any more tips about Valheim? Tell us what they are in the comments below. If you found this video useful, please feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscribe to the channel. And as always, have fun out there.